Alrighty, so gonna be installing these pulleys right here. Got the instructions on the bottom, and I'll be going through them. So to show y'all exactly step by step how to do this, there's actually that little tool right there that you're gonna need, and then the bolts that go in at the front, and then there's looks like the Loctite. So we're gonna be going through all that stuff, and I got the car jacked up already. And you're definitely going to need one of these guys, right? A 250 foot-pound torque wrench, to get that bolt back on. So anyway, so let me get started and be right back. All right, so first step, obviously, to jack it all up, in the air, and then you want to go ahead and remove one of your plastics on the bottom. I got a little bit more work because I got that Tom's lip thing on there, so I got to remove some of that stuff to be able to get this piece off. So some of those little screws got to come off, and then the rest of it just comes right off with the regular 10 millimeters that come with it, and then the little plastic covers, clips. All right, so let me get with that and be right back. All right, so once you remove the cover, you're gonna see a pulley right over here. This is gonna be a tensioner pulley, right? So you put yourself a 14 millimeter. That's what I'm using, 14 millimeter. And then you're gonna take it and move it this way, and that loosens up the belt. Okay, so once you do that, just pull the bolt off and allow you to have more access to what you need to do. Okay, and that is your crank pulley. That's where we're going to be removing, and some of the other pulleys on top. So alrighty, let me do that, and then I'll get back with you. Okay, once the belt's off, you want to grab something small like that, maybe like a 2 to 3 millimeter piece. The instruction says 5 millimeters, but the small hole's pretty small if you use a 5 millimeter Allen key, so you want to use something a little bit smaller. And then you want to line it up with the hole that is on the back. So there's a hole on the back of it. This hole needs to line up with that hole. So you take your piece, move it in place, and then you just slide that in place. And that way you can put your belt back whenever it's time to do that. Okay? Alright, I'll be back. Alright, something like that. Alright, so the next thing you want to do is actually take something like this, about a 3-inch or equivalent socket, extension socket, and then you want to jab that in the crank pulley. Okay, so your crank pulley is right over there. You want to put it inside the crank pulley, basically like the picture of the R Racing one says. Alright, so that's what you want to do next. And that'll allow the crank pulley to get stuck in its position and allow you to remove that bolt. This part is pretty critical, making sure that you get that right. You're gonna have to spin it a little bit until it kind of catches. That's what I've basically seen. So alright, so let me go ahead and do that and be back. Alright, so once you have your little piece in and you can see it, that's your 3-inch socket. Get it closer. That's what you're going to see sticking out from the other side, right? And that is against the engine block, right? That keeps your pulley from moving around, right? And then you put in your 22 millimeter socket on there, and then you just put the pressure and release your crank bolt. So it takes about 250 foot-pounds to actually remove it, probably a little bit more. So you're gonna have to put a lot of force on it. I already loosened it up, but that's what you're gonna do. Okay, so yeah, you're definitely a 22 millimeter. And at this point now, that bolt is loose. So yeah. Now I'm just using my hand to finish it off. And once you get that bolt off, there's something else you gotta do. But let me get this off right quick, show you the bolts. the bolt in question. All right, it's a big old boy. So the instructions don't tell you 22, but that's what I'm using, 22. I'm sorry, that's a 24. The 22 is what I'm using. Yep, 22. All right, so now once this is off, and then you're gonna have to spin this a little bit with your torque wrench or whatever big system you use to take that off, that bolt, until it catches onto the block right there. Okay, so when you first put it in, it won't automatically catch. Just spin it a little bit, and then it'll catch. It'll stop spinning. So yep. So now that is the bolts off, but now you got to take your pry bar and put a little bit of pressure on this side, then a little bit of pressure on this side, and just move the pressures maybe a little bit from a little more higher, and then you're basically walking that out outside. So once you do that, it should pop out and go from there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll be back. All right, so I've been working it a little bit, on one side, coming back to the other side a little bit. This side. Just keep doing that. As you can tell, it's coming out, but that's what you want to do, put pressure on both sides, and then little by little it starts working it out. All right, let me keep doing that, and I'll be back. All right, here's the comparison between the two, and I'm gonna weigh it. This is the scale that I normally use, so this is the factory one. This is the racing one. It tells you, how much it tightened up, and it's designed to have a extra pulley just in case in the future you want to go supercharged with your kit, and you add the pulley on top, bolts on. But yep, that's how it is from the inside. Let's turn the scale back on. Zeroed out. Let's put the factory one on. 10.2. 10.2 pounds. 5.6. Okay, so almost 5 pounds difference, and this is all in the front of the car, so makes a difference. Not only just because it's in the front of the car, but on the engine, obviously it's rotating weight. It's the most help it can do. It's right on the crank. So yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully it helps with the acceleration. It helps with my with me trying to get to the closest possible to 12 seconds. But yep, this is what I'm gonna be installing. So yep, 5.6. Right about 10.2. Okay, alrighty, so that is the comparison there. And I also have the pulleys that I'm going to be replacing, and now that you have the crank out of the way, it gives you a lot more room from the bottom to do that. So you want to always remove that first if you're going to do the pulleys. So now before I put this back on, I go ahead and remove all the pulleys, the factory pulleys that are there. And that one is pretty simple. You'll look up and you'll see everything there, and it's pretty self-explanatory. But I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so these are the water pump pulley, and the other pulley removing, and they're a pound difference between these two. Between these two right here and this one, a pound. So total of around 6 pounds you're going to be removing off the front of rotating mass. And also this pulley right here, which is the water pump pulley, it's a little bit smaller, so it the new pulley from OR Racing actually spins the water pump a little bit slower, but that helps the cooling when the car is running at higher RPMs. So cavitation issues and stuff like that. So this one helps you, like if you're at the track, helps you to keep the engine cooler. According to their test, it hasn't actually hindered the cooling at idle and whatnot, but it's a little bit slower. As you can tell, this pulley is smaller than this one. So a little bit smaller. But yep, that's it. So guys, and these guys right here, they're all 12mm bolts. These are free spinning whenever you pull the bolt off, so you want to grab it with a 12mm and then use another 12mm, take it off. In the last nut, last bolt, you want to just put your pry bar in, put one of the bolts back in, but not super tight, pry bar in, and loosen up the bolt on this side so it won't allow it to spin. Same thing with that one, you got to do. This particular one, you can actually stick something inside of it so it won't spin until it catches, and then you remove the bolts. So going back in with them, I put them in nice and snug, and then once the belt is in and everything, then I go back and I torque them down. So that's what I do when the belt's on. So anyway, but that's that. So now I'm going to go ahead and just start putting these bad boys back on. I'm going to start putting these guys on because it's easier to put them on now, and then I'll leave that one for last. So I'll be right back. Alright, so now those are the pulleys. They're installed. They're snugged up. I still got to tighten them up once I put the belt back on. But yep, that's it. And I still have this little guy still stuck in here, keeping this, away. So now it's time for the crank pulley. Now the crank pulley, it has a woodruff key, and you got to verify, make sure it's still there. And it is. It's right there. And so now that guy has to be lubed up a little bit with this stuff, right? And so let me go ahead and start doing that, and I'll get right back with you. All right, you also want the woodruff key to be slightly pointed downwards, right? You can see there that it's this is what we're talking about, guys. So it's thicker up here than it is up here. So that's what you want to do. You want to slightly angle it. So once you put the pulley in the front, you slide it in, it'll go in much easier. Okay. All right. Okay. So now you want to apply that stuff on the beginning part of the crank, and that's how it should look. Now you're going to take your crankshaft and you're going to crankshaft pulley and put it in place and start sliding it across the woodruff key. So you got to line up the woodruff key with the crankshaft pulley. So let me do that and I'll be back. Okay, so I was able to put the pulley, crankshaft pulley on, just using my hand force. I put a good bit of force, but just wiggled it, make sure the woodruff key was still in spot and that it didn't slide out. And I was able to just wiggle it in place, put pressure, and looks like it's pretty much all the way in. So now I'm going to put the bolt in and go from there. Alright, so now you just put your bolt in and just go in as far as possible with your hand. Also on this bolt, I use thread locker blue. Okay, the instructions with OR Racing doesn't say, but I've always used thread locker blue on all my crank bolts. So thread locker blue, just a little bit down a little line, it'll, and it'll actually help with the lubrication going in. So That's it. That's about as far as it goes. Now at this point, you're gonna have to be installing the tool that they provide, which is this guy right here. So this tool will attach to the bolts here and actually will rest onto the, this housing right here. So once it's in place, allows your place to tighten up, and then the bottom of it will be against the housing. So that'll allow you to get you to your you know, to your bolt, to tighten up your bolt. So personally, myself, I would tighten it to 150 first, and then let it be for, you know, a couple seconds, and then I would go up to 200, and then I would go give it a couple seconds, and then I would go up to the 243 where it says, right? So 243 foot-pounds is what you want to have it tight as, 243. So that's what I would do. That is my personal recommendation, but that's how I always done it. All right, guys, well, let me get started on that. I'll be right back. All right, so now you're gonna go ahead and put that bracket, that tool that R Racing provides. And that's how it's gonna look, right? The bolts right here that attach it to that doesn't have to be tight, just snug. You know, you can do a hand snug or just a half turn. You know, they're Allen keys, so you don't have to put them in too tight. Just enough to where it's snug on there, and then you see how it lays on there. So now, when you put pressure with it, when you torque it down, you know, you have something to torque down with. And then the first setting, you know, I put it at 150. So that's what I'm doing now. Alright, so I need both hands, so I'll let you go, but yeah, that's the process on it. So I'm going to do 150, 200, and then I'm going to finish it at a 242, where it says it's supposed to be. Alright, be right back. Alright, time to put the belt on. I'm going to give you a little diagram to show you how to run the belt. So I'm going to pause this video, give you a diagram, look at it, and then we'll go back to it. Alright, now that you see the diagram, that's the first pulley on top. So that's the little tensioner pulley. You want to go in, this is the AC unit. So that's the side. So this is the driver's side of the car. You want to start riding the belt that way. Okay, and then bring it back up, and then follow that diagram up all the way. And once you're done, you know, you pull that clip off. But let me go ahead and run this and go from there. It looks hard, guys, but it's not that hard. Just follow that diagram that I posted. Okay, be right back. Okay, so once you have routed all of your belt how it's supposed to, then you take your 42mm right here, and then you're gonna push it away from the little pin that you put in place. You pull that pin, and then you release the pressure, and then it will tighten everything up. Before you do so, you want to make sure that everything is lined up in the grooves. Okay, especially before you turn it on. So if you let it go, you see something is a little bit off on the belt, then, you know, just try to adjust it to where it's right on the groove and everything. So that's what I'm about to do now, and I'll see you in a little bit. Alright, so you make sure you verify that everything's in place. Look around, make sure everything looks good. Verify it in the bottom too. So now you start the car. is, guys. There she is. So now you gotta put the cover back on and she's ready to go. Alright guys, well, let me know if y'all like it. You know, go ahead and like and subscribe. Send me any questions if you have any, and I'll see you on the next one. Alright.